Good morning. I had half a cup of coffee. Just completed chapter 4. We're going to be visiting chapter 5 of Clive Barker's ABARAT. Chapter 5. A Shore Without Sea. After perhaps 10 minutes of walking, Candy glanced back over her shoulder to see that the gentle swells and gullies she'd crossed to get her to her present position had put Chicken Town out of sight completely. Even the spire of the church on Hawthorne Street and the 5 stories of the town hall had vanished. She took a moment and turned on the spot, 360 degrees. In every direction, the landscape presented the same unremarkable vista of wind-blown grass, with 2 exceptions. Some way off her right lay some small copse of trees, and nearly dead ahead of her was a much more curious sight. A kind of skeletal tower set in the middle of this wilderness of grass and flowers. What was it? Some kind of watchtower? If it had been a watchtower, then those who'd occupied it must have been very bored with nothing to watch. Though it promised to be nothing more than a near ruin, she decided to make it her destination. She'd get there, sit for a while, and then head back. She was getting thirsty, for one thing. She wanted a glass of water. Maybe on the return journey she'd pick up some soda from Niles' drugstore. She dug in her pockets just to see what she had. 2 singles, 1 $5 and 1 $10 bill. She pushed them down to the very bottom of her pocket so that they wouldn't slip out. That's a tower. The wind had become stronger in the time since she'd left the limits of Chicken Town, and a little more bracing. There was still the smell of spring green in the air, but there was something else besides, something Candy couldn't quite name, but which teased her nonetheless. She walked toward the tower, her mind becoming pleasantly devoid of troubling thoughts. Miss Schwartz, letters threatening expulsion, her father in his drinking chair, staring up at her with that look of his, the look she knew meant trouble. All of it was left behind where the street ended. Then her toe caught some object so that it skipped ahead of her through the grass. Just a stone, surely. Nevertheless, she bent down to take a closer look, and to her surprise she saw that it was not a stone at all, but a shell. It was large, too, about the size of her balled fist, and there was a number of short spikes on it. It wasn't, she knew, a snail shell. For one thing, it was too big, and she had never seen a snail shell with spikes. No, this was a seashell, and it was clearly old. Its colors had faded, but she could still see an elaborate pattern upon it, a design that followed its diminishing spiral. She turned it over, brushed what looked suspiciously like sand off of its crevices, and put it to her ear. It was a trick her grandfather had taught her, listening to the sea in a shell. And though she knew it was just an illusion, the subtle reverberations of the air in the shell's interior, she was still half persuaded by it, half certain she heard the sounds of waves, as if the shell still had some memory of its life in the ocean. She listened. There it was. But what was a seashell doing out here? Had somebody dropped it while walking here? That seemed highly unlikely. Who went walking with seashells in their pockets? She looked down, wondering if anything else had been dropped in the vicinity. To her surprise, the answer was yes. There were a number of odd items scattered under her feet. More shells, for one thing. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Some small, a few even larger than the one she'd pick up. Most were cracked or broken, but some were still intact. Their shapes and designs more beautiful, more bizarre than anything she'd ever seen in a book. And there was more, besides a lot more. As she studied the ground, her eyes becoming accustomed to picking out curiosities, the curiosities multiplied. There were pieces of wood scattered among the shells, most smoothed into the little abstract sculptures by the pale freckled sand that was mingled with the dark Minnesota dirt. As she bent to pick one of the sculptures up, she saw that there was glass here too, countless fragments, green, blue, and white, turned into smoky jewels. She picked up 3 or 4, examined them in the palm of her hand, walking a little way as she did so. There were more mysteries underfoot with every step she took. A large fish, its flesh pecked away by birds, and the remains baked by the sun. And even a piece of pottery, on which a fragment of an exquisite design remained, a blue figure staring at her with almost hypnotic intensity. Fascinated by all of this, she paused to examine her finds more closely. As she did so, she caught a movement in the long grass out of the corner of her eye. She dropped down onto her haunches below the level of the tallest grass stalks, and there she stayed, suddenly and unaccountably nervous. Check out these pictures. She brushed the last of the sand off her fingers and watched for whatever had moved to move again. The hard gust of wind came through the grass, making it hiss as the stalks rubbed against one another. I like this new book. After perhaps a minute, during which the only motion was the bending of the grass, she decided to chance standing up. As she did so, the thing she'd seen moving chose precisely the same moment to also stand upright, so that the pair of them, Candy and the stranger, rose like 2 swimmers emerging from the shallow sea. Candy let out a yelp of shock at the sight of the stranger, and then, once the shock had worn off, she started to laugh. The man, whoever he was wearing some kind of Halloween mask, or so it seemed. What other explanation could there have been for his frightening, freakish appearance? His left eye was round and wild, while his right was narrow and sly, and his mouth, framed by a black mustache and beard, was downturned in misery. But none of this was as odd as what sprouted from the top of his head. There were large downy ears, and above them 2 enormous antlers, which would have resembled those of a stag, except there were 7 heads, 4 on the left horn and 3 on the right, growing from them, heads with eyes, noses, and mouths. They weren't, she realized now, static, nor were they made of rubber or paper mache. In short, it was not a mask the man was wearing. These heads sprouting from the antlers were alive, and they were all staring at Candy the way their owner was staring at her. 8 pairs of eyes, all studying her with the same manic intensity. She was speechless, but they were not. After a moment of silence, the heads erupted into a wild chatter, their manner highly agitated. Candy had no doubt about the subject of conversation. One minute the heads were looking at her, then they were facing one another, their volume rising as they attempted to out-talk one another. The only mouth that wasn't moving was that of the man himself. He simply studied Candy, his wild and sly expression slowly becoming one of tentative inquiry. Finally, he decided to approach her. Candy let out a little gasp of fear, and in response he raised his long-fingered hands as though to keep her from running away. The heads, meanwhile, were still chattering to one another. "Be quiet," he ordered them. "You're frightening the lady." All but one of the heads, the middle of the 2 on his right horn, a round-faced, sour individual, responded to his order, but this one kept talking. "Keep your distance from her, John Mischief," the head advised. "It's Big Brother. She may look harmless, but you can't trust them, any of them." "I said, hush up, John Serpent," the man said, "and I mean it." The head made a face and muttered something under its breath, but it finally stopped talking. "What's your name, John Mischief?" asked Candy. "Me?" Candy said, as though there was anybody else in the vicinity to whom the questions might be directed. "Oh, Lordy Lou," another of the heads remarked. "Yes, you girl." "Be polite, John Swallow," John Mischief said, reaching up without taking his eyes off of Candy and lightly slapping the short-tempered head for its offense. Then, having hushed his companion, John Mischief said, "I do apologize for my brother, lady." Then, all of the things, he bowed to her. It was not a deep bow, but there was something about the simple courtesy of the gesture that completely won Candy over. So what if John Mischief had 7 extra heads? He bowed to her and called her lady. Nobody had ever done that to her before. She smiled with improbable delight, and the impish man called John Mischief, along with the 5 of his 7 siblings, smiled back. "Please," he said, "I do not wish to alarm you, lady. Believe me that this is the very last thing I wish to do. But there is somebody in this vicinity by the name of Shape." "Mendelssohn Shape," the smallest of the heads said. "As John Moot says, Mendelssohn Shape." Before Candy could deal with any more information, she needed a question answered, so she asked it. "Are you all called John?" she said. "Oh, yes," said Mischief. "Tell her, brothers, left to right, tell her what we are called." So they did. John Fillet, John Sallow, John Moot, John Drowse, John Pluckett, John Serpent, John Slop. "And I'm the head brother," the 8th wonder replied, "John Mischief." "Yes, I heard that part. I'm Candy Quackenbush." "I'm extremely pleased to make your acquaintance," John Mischief said. He sounded completely sincere in this, and with good reason. To judge by his appearance, things had not gone well for him, or them, of late. Mischief's striped blue shirt was full of holes, and there were stains on his loosely knotted tie, which were either food or blood. She guessed the latter. Then there was his smell. He was less than sweet, to say the least. His shirt clung to his chest, soaked with pungent sweat. "Have you been running from this man, Shape?" Candy said. "She's observant," John Pluckett said appreciatively. "I like that. And young, which is good. She can help us, Mischief. Either that or she can get us into even deeper trouble," said John Serpent. "We're as deep as we can get," John Slop observed. "I say, we trust the girl, Mischief. We've got absolutely nothing to lose." "What are they talking about?" Candy asked Mischief. "Besides me, the harbor," he replied. "What harbor?" Candy said. "There's no harbor here. This is Minnesota. We're hundreds of miles from the ocean. No, thousands." "Perhaps we're thousands of miles from the ocean you are familiar with, lady," said John Fillet, with the gap-toothed smile. "But there are oceans and oceans and seas and seas." "What on earth is he talking about?" Candy asked Mischief. John Mischief pointed toward the tower that stood 60 or 70 yards from where they stood. "That, lady, is a lighthouse," he said. "No," Candy said with a smile. "The idea was preposterous. Why would anybody look at it?" said John Drowse. "It's a lighthouse." Candy studied the odd tower again. Yes, she could see that indeed. It could have been designed as a lighthouse. There were the rotted remains of the staircase, spiraling up the middle of it, leading to a room at the top, which might have housed a lamp. But so what? Somebody was crazy, she remarked. "Why?" said John Slop. "Oh, come on," said Candy. "We've been through this. We're in Minnesota. There is no sea in—" Candy stopped mid-sentence. Mischief had put his hand to his mouth, hushing her. As he did so, all of his brothers looked off in one direction or another. A few were sniffing the air, others tasting it on their lips. Whatever they did and wherever they looked, they all came to the same conclusion, and together they murmured 2 words. "Shapes here," they said. And this is the 8-headed thing. And it also concludes the chapter. Chapter 5. Whoop, whoop. Have a great day.